Welcome to British Focus. Today, I invite you to reflect on the astonishing and seemingly calculated transformation in the climate policy stance of Kemi Badenoch, a transformation that raises profound questions about political integrity and the reliability of public discourse. In recent months, we have witnessed a dramatic and unmistakable reversal in her position on net zero policies. Once a vocal advocate for the United Kingdom's commitment to achieving net zero, a goal that, at the time, she described as both essential and visionary for a cleaner, greener future, Badenoch now positions herself as a fervent critic of the very same targets she once championed. This inconsistency, dear viewers, is not merely a matter of shifting opinions. It strikes at the heart of political accountability, exposing what appears to be a deliberate attempt to rewrite history in favor of a rising tide of right-wing populism. For those who have followed her career, it is particularly bewildering to note that Badenoch has, on numerous occasions, declared herself skeptical of net zero policies. Yet, during her tenure in government, she did not hesitate to highlight the merits of the UK's detailed and cost-effective strategy, even praising its potential to drive a transformative environmental agenda. It is almost as if her past declarations, which painted a picture of cautious optimism about climate initiatives, have been conveniently obscured by a new narrative, one that conveniently distances her from the policies she once endorsed. One cannot help but wonder if this dramatic flip-flop is less about a genuine change of heart and more about a strategic maneuver designed to garner support from an electorate increasingly disillusioned with climate commitments that they now perceive as impractical or even economically detrimental. In examining this shift, one must consider the broader political context. Following the recent US elections in November, there is compelling evidence to suggest that Badenoch made concerted efforts to align herself with prominent figures of the right-wing populist movement, including former President Donald Trump. Her interactions with influential political personalities, such as a meeting with the US Vice President J.D. Vance, and her support for initiatives like Elon Musk's campaign for a public inquiry into grooming gangs, indicate a clear pivot towards an anti-climate, anti-woke stance. This move appears to be calculated not only to capture the vote of the far right, but also to solidify her position in a political landscape that is increasingly hostile to the long-standing commitments required to combat climate change. What is most striking, however, is the evidence provided by a comprehensive analysis from Desmog, which scrutinized Badenoch's parliamentary records and media appearances over time. According to this analysis, her stance on net zero has not only shifted but has done so in a manner that starkly contradicts her earlier positions. While serving as a government minister under Boris Johnson, she was a supporter of the net zero agenda, a policy framework that was widely seen as a pioneering step in the fight against climate change. Yet, as she embarked on her campaign for the leadership of the Conservative Party in 2022, she began to criticize these very policies, distancing herself from the commitments she had once promoted. This vacillation continued even during her subsequent role within Rishi Sunak's cabinet, further underlining the apparent opportunism in her political recalibration. It is difficult, therefore, not to view these developments with a healthy dose of skepticism. When a politician appears to pivot their stance on a critical issue so drastically, it begs the question: are we witnessing an evolution of thought based on new insights, or is this merely a tactical repositioning aimed at winning votes in a volatile political climate? The evidence suggests the latter. By adopting a posture that is diametrically opposed to her earlier advocacy, Badenoch seems to be engaging in a form of political opportunism that prioritizes electoral success over a consistent and principled commitment to environmental policy. Her current assertions, that there was never a concrete plan for achieving net zero, are not only at odds with the documented reality of her past support for detailed and cost-effective climate strategies but also serve to cast doubt on her overall integrity as a policymaker. For the discerning observer, this is a troubling development. In an era where climate change represents one of the most pressing challenges of our time, the need for credible, steadfast leadership is more urgent than ever. Yet, when politicians like Badenoch choose to rewrite their past in pursuit of short-term political gains, it undermines the trust that citizens place in their leaders. The apparent willingness to abandon a previously endorsed vision for the sake of political expediency is a stark reminder of how easily truth can be manipulated to serve a particular agenda, a phenomenon that is, unfortunately, becoming all too common in contemporary politics. As you digest these revelations, I encourage you to reflect on the broader implications of such political maneuvers. The narrative of opportunism that emerges from Badenoch's flip-flop on net zero is not an isolated incident. It is symptomatic of a larger trend where political actors are increasingly tempted to abandon long-held commitments when those commitments no longer serve their electoral interests. In this light, the case of Kemi Badenoch serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of prioritizing vote-winning strategies over genuine, evidence-based policymaking. It invites us, as an engaged and informed public, to demand higher standards of consistency and transparency from those who aspire to lead us through the complex challenges of the modern world. Today, as we stand at the crossroads of environmental crisis and political recalibration, the need for clear, honest, and unwavering leadership has never been more apparent. It is incumbent upon us to scrutinize the actions of our public figures, to hold them accountable for the promises they make, and to ensure that the critical issue of climate change is not sacrificed on the altar of political expediency. Through channels like British Focus, we aim to provide you with a platform where such issues are examined in detail, fostering a dialogue that is as rigorous as it is essential for the future of our society. When one examines the dramatic reversal in Kemi Badenoch's stance on net zero, one cannot help but feel a profound sense of disillusionment with the state of modern politics. It is as though the very essence of political integrity has been cast aside in favor of a calculated shift designed purely to win votes. Badenoch, once a staunch advocate for the United Kingdom's ambitious climate goals, now positions herself as an ardent critic of those very targets. This transformation is not merely a matter of evolving opinions based on new information. Rather, it appears to be a deliberate and opportunistic rewriting of her own past, a maneuver to align herself with the populist currents sweeping through certain sections of the electorate. When you scrutinize her record, it becomes glaringly apparent that during her time in government, she not only supported but actively promoted policies aimed at achieving net zero. In 2020, she even went so far as to praise the UK's strategy as detailed and cost-effective, a stark contrast to her current assertions that no concrete plan ever existed. Such contradictions naturally lead us to question, what is the true motivation behind this sudden repudiation of a policy she once championed? Consider the broader context in which this reversal has occurred. In the wake of the November US elections, Badenoch sought to align herself with figures from the right-wing populist movement, even engaging with former President Donald Trump and other prominent voices who have voiced skepticism towards mainstream climate science. Her meetings with influential political figures, such as the US Vice President J.D. Vance, and her support for controversial initiatives, including backing Elon Musk's campaign for a public inquiry into grooming gangs, seem to be part of a broader strategy to reposition herself politically. This isn't just a change in rhetoric, it is a complete overhaul of her public persona, one that appears designed to appeal to a segment of the electorate increasingly disenchanted with what they perceive as the economic burdens of climate policy. For those who have followed her career, this opportunistic flip-flop is both puzzling and troubling, for it undermines the credibility of a politician who once stood for a comprehensive and coherent environmental strategy. Furthermore, an analysis conducted by Desmog, which meticulously examined parliamentary records and media appearances, reveals that Badenoch's position on net zero has undergone significant changes over time. Initially, as a government minister under Boris Johnson, she was an advocate for the net zero agenda, a policy framework that was widely hailed as a pioneering step towards a sustainable future. Yet, as she transitioned into her bid for the leadership of the Conservative Party in 2022, her narrative shifted dramatically. She began to criticize the very policies she once endorsed, casting doubt on their feasibility and cost-effectiveness. Later, even during her time in Rishi Sunak's cabinet, she continued this trend, further distancing herself from the commitments she had previously made. This pattern of behavior suggests that Badenoch's current stance is less about a genuine change of heart and more about a tactical recalibration aimed at appealing to a different, more skeptical voter base. For many of us who are committed to addressing the existential threat of climate change, such inconsistencies are not merely disappointing, they are alarming. The challenges posed by global warming require leaders who are steadfast, consistent, and guided by scientific evidence, not by the fleeting demands of political expediency. When a public figure blatantly rewrites their history, claiming long-standing opposition to policies they once supported, it erodes the trust that is so crucial for any meaningful public discourse. How can we, as citizens, rely on our leaders to make informed and principled decisions when they appear willing to abandon their earlier commitments in pursuit of short-term political gains? It is important to engage critically with these developments, and I urge you, dear listeners, to reflect on the broader implications of such political maneuvers. Badenoch's flip-flop on net zero is symptomatic of a larger trend in contemporary politics, where ideological consistency is sacrificed on the altar of electoral advantage. This is not simply about one politician's change of heart. It is indicative of a systemic issue where truth becomes malleable, and the historical record is manipulated to serve the shifting sands of public opinion. When politicians adjust their positions to capture the support of a particular demographic, even if it means discarding well-documented policies and proven strategies, it undermines the very foundation of democratic accountability. Moreover, the timing of Badenoch's transformation cannot be ignored. In an era when the adverse effects of climate change are becoming increasingly palpable, and when urgent action is required to limit global warming to safe levels, the decision to abandon a coherent environmental strategy is, at best, short-sighted and, at worst, dangerous. As the evidence from scientific research and governmental reports consistently underscores the necessity of a swift transition to net zero, the opportunistic abandonment of such policies in favor of populist rhetoric is a betrayal of the public trust. It raises the uncomfortable question of whether political leaders are more invested in securing their own positions than in safeguarding the future of our planet. I encourage you to consider the stark reality of the situation. The urgency of the climate crisis demands that we hold our leaders to the highest standards of accountability and integrity. When a figure like Kemi Badenoch, who once actively promoted a detailed and forward-thinking climate policy, suddenly recasts herself as a skeptic, it is not merely a matter of political debate. It is a disservice to every citizen who believes in the need for evidence-based policy and long-term planning. As you ponder these issues, I invite you to stay informed, to question inconsistencies, and to demand a level of transparency and commitment from those in power that is commensurate with the gravity of the challenges we face. In closing, I want to thank you for taking the time to engage with these critical reflections. Your willingness to delve into the complexities of political maneuvers and environmental policy is what drives a more informed and active public discourse. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and let us continue to hold our leaders accountable for the promises they make and the policies they endorse. Thank you for joining me in this examination, and I look forward to our next discussion.